Alrighty, so yes, the Silk Road was a network of Eurasian trade routes active from the 2nd century BCE until the mid 15th century. Spanning over 4,000 miles, it played a central role in facilitating economic, cultural, political, and religious interactions between the Eastern and Western worlds. Today, we're highlighting the exhibit that Jacques and AJ got to see in person, the Silk Roads exhibit at the British Museum. So what do you imagine when you think of the Silk Road? Rather than a single trade route from east to west, as Jacques was saying, it was the Silk Roads that were made up of these overlapping networks linking communities across Asia, Africa, and Europe. It was more than just silk and spices, but really an expansion of knowledge and culture that really shaped the course of history. The origins of these intricate trade networks originate in China and Eastern Asia. The network began with the expansion of the Han Dynasty, which was roughly 200 BCE to 220 CE. So the Han Dynasty into Central Asia around 114 BCE through the missions and exploration of the Chinese imperial envoy Zhang Qian, who brought the region under a unified control. The Chinese took great interest in the security of their trade route and their products, and so they extended the Great Wall of China to ensure the protection of these routes. On this slide, we can see artifacts found in modern-day China and Korea, but these all have some European influence with the use of gold, and specifically the teacup has Roman and Greek influence. The next expansion of these trade networks extend down to India. And this introduced Buddhism throughout Asia and really had a profound impact on Chinese culture and religion. Art is a key aspect to any religion. And through this exhibit, we can see how these rugs, drawings, and artifacts relating to Buddhism were important in the development of the Silk Roads. Few may associate diplomacy and warfare with the Silk Roads, but both helped propel people, objects, and ideas across cultural boundaries. Here's a lively sketch from the Library Cave in Dunhuang, a Buddhist center in northwest China. It evokes diplomatic relations between the local ruler of Dunhuang and neighboring kingdoms in the Tarim Basin and Chinese dynasties during the 900s. It shows two envoys wearing the headdresses of government officials, traveling with a horse and camel that were probably intended as tribute, given that they're not carrying any goods to trade. This painted wooden panel tells the story of the Silk Princess and the beginning of the transfer of the silk technologies along these trade routes. So the story is that one day, Empress Lezu was sitting under a mulberry tree, drinking tea. A silkworm cocoon dropped into her teacup. Its thread-like texture began to loosen up in the hot liquid, and she unraveled the long, glossy thread. Marveling at the fiber's magic-like transformation, she collected other cocoons and together weaved the threads into cloth. Empress Lezu's fateful discovery of silk farming, or sericulture, would cause her to become deified, becoming the goddess of silk in Chinese mythology. She's still a popular figure of worship today, now known as the Silk Mother. As the trade routes extended, Central Asia and the Middle East became influential in this shared culture. The communities in the Eurasian steppe, as it's known geographically, bred and domesticated horses. Having access and power over such animals became a huge advantage in trade from the entirety of Eurasia, and eventually helped with the colonization of the Americas hundreds of years later. This exhibit highlights objects from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan that have never been seen in the UK before, and it just really underpins the importance of Central Asia to this continent-spanning story. Another commodity now being traded and valued was lapis lazuli from modern-day Afghanistan. Here we have a painted map of the world titled Pleasure of He Who Longs to Cross the Horizons. And on the right is a glass drinking horn found in Italy with origins from the Eurasian steppe. There were a series of wars between the Chinese and the different cultural groups in Central Asia over the seizure and access to horses. They were known as the Wars of Heavenly Horses. And it's important to remember that while this was a pivotal period in sharing and trading throughout the Middle East, it came with violence, slavery, and hardship. However, once the Han Dynasty was able to establish trade with Central Asia and began sending emissaries to this region, that trade and those routes were able to expand into Europe through the Mediterranean. Gold was a huge commodity for Europe, as were manufactured objects, and all three of these items showcase the artistry and design of European goods at the time. We have here from Romania, Scotland, and England. This guy might not look familiar, but you've definitely heard his name. This is Marco Polo, famed Venetian explorer who traveled along the Silk Roads to China and was the first European to explore parts of northern China and modern-day Mongolia. The exhibit at the British Museum focuses more on the early expansion of these trade routes and the Silk Roads, but Polo was still an integral figure for redrawing maps of the world and sharing cultural knowledge. Here's another picture of Jacques and AJ at the exhibit, and it just really shows the focus on cross-cultural knowledge sharing through the over 300 artifacts on display. I'll end with some knowledge on the name itself, Silk Road. The term Silk Road wasn't created and popularized until the mid-19th century in Germany, but it wasn't without contestation. Historians at the time argued that the maritime spice trade with India and Arabia was far more consequential for the economy of the Roman Empire than the silk trade with China. Or some argued that the, quote, Golden Road extending from Rome to Japan was highly significant. But in any case, the term Silk Roads stuck in popular vocabulary and really encompasses the vast network of trade and culture sharing over hundreds of years. Thank you.